The budget last year certainly made an impact on the Singapore economy. So last year we saw the economy contract 5%. This year we're expecting it to expand by 5%. And last year in FY20, our budget deficit was some 15% of GDP, and we expect it to be obviously lower this year of around 2 to 5%. And what we've seen is a really good impact, firstly, on employment. We've seen the fact that the stimulus measures that we introduced last year have reduced the unemployment rate by some 2% last year. And hence, going into this budget, we'll be expecting a lot more, more focus on the job creation, the upskilling, and so forth. The two key areas of focus, obviously, small to medium-sized enterprises, the wage support, the rental relief, the tax relief. We'll be looking in those areas, but also obviously looking in those sectors that have been more adversely impacted, particularly hospitality, tourism, retail, consumer-facing F&B, and of course aviation. So looking at providing more liquidity for the SMEs, looking at supporting the lower income wage earners, as well as obviously the big plans, looking at in terms of the greener infrastructure, increasing the size of the manufacturing sector by 50% over the next 10 years or so, and looking at ways we can upskill and prepare our workers for this new generation economy per se going into 2030.
Right, but are we reaching the tail end of the support from the authorities, from policymakers, given how well Singapore's handled the virus situation and the vaccine rollout?
Well, the problem is it really depends on the world with the coronavirus. Obviously, we've had really encouraging news with the numbers coming out of Europe and US, and that's so important for Singapore because Europe and the US, they've made up 80% of the global infections, but they also make up 1/3 of global trade and 2/5 of the global GDP pie. And hence, you've got this big impact on the small open economies with the majors. Two of the G3 economies hit so hard. So the coronavirus is the overarching theme per se, and the support measures will really depend on how we are able to come out of this in the second half of 2021. And of course, I guess if you're looking towards the tail end, you're looking at other areas of discussion such as raising revenue, increasing the GST per se. So we might see some chat on that, but most of the market does not expect any GST hike, at least till next year, to where we can see some, I guess, longer sequential growth in the GDP. We've just seen 2 quarters of sequential GDP growth, but most of the economy, especially in the services area, is under pressure. Manufacturing has been a super strong point for Singapore. The manufacturing sector grew 7% last year. And thankfully, I know you mentioned that the STI as a benchmark has underperformed per se, but in terms of the sectors, where so much of the world's benchmarks are sector-driven these days, the manufacturing sector has performed quite strongly in Singapore, particularly in the medical supply and the technology segments, and increasingly so in the non-cyclical consumer materials and resources and the broader industrial manufacturing type of place.